Good evening, and welcome to AJP's Northeast Asia Market Close. Here's the story of the day. The region's markets came out of the gate at a sprint on chips and foreign money. Korea, China, and Japan all opened sharply higher this morning, riding a more than 5% overnight jump in U.S. chip stocks. Foreign investors poured back into Seoul after a month-long exodus. And by the closing bell, almost none of it held. Korea clung to a small gain, Japan slipped into the red, and Shanghai finished flat. One catalyst lifted all three at the open. Caution took it away by the close. The morning belonged to semiconductors, the afternoon belonged to second thoughts. Start with the flow, because that's the real headline. Foreign investors bought a net 2.6 trillion won, around $1.8 billion of Korean shares today, snapping the selling streak that had pulled more than 40 trillion won out of this market over the past month. That buying was strong enough to trip a buy-side sidecar within minutes of the open. The KOSPI gapped up nearly 6%, pushed past 7,100, and looked set for a historic session. Then it faded all day. The index closed around 6,800, up just 0.75% a sliver of where it started. The reason? Retail and domestic institutions sold into the rally, together dumping well over 2.5 trillion won, and absorbing almost everything the foreigners bought. You can see the round trip in the leaders. SK Hynix touched 2 million won intraday, then reversed to close at around 1.83 million won, about $1,237 down a whisker on the day. Samsung Electronics opened up 5% and closed at around 260,500 won, or $176, up barely 0.5%. What actually held its gain wasn't a chip name at all. Hyundai Mobis, the auto parts maker, finished around 513,000, won some $347, up nearly 7%, as money quietly rotated out of the crowded semiconductor trade and into autos. Shanghai sat the chip rally out entirely. The composite finished essentially flat, around 3,860, and the reason was written in oil. Renewed tension around the Strait of Hormuz after Washington reimposed its blockade on Iranian shipping earlier this month has put a fresh bid under crude, and Chinese energy majors were the day's clear winners. CNOOC jumped more than 4% to around 32 yuan. PetroChina added about 1.5% to just under 11 yuan. Against that, the market's marquee chip maker went the other way. SMIC fell nearly 3% to around 155 yuan. A pointed reminder that the semiconductor enthusiasm lighting up Seoul and Tokyo this morning never really crossed into the mainland. In China today, the trade was energy and geopolitics, not artificial intelligence. Japan tells the same fate story as Korea, only sharper because the Nikkei didn't just give back its gains, it went negative. The index opened up almost 2% on the same chip tailwind, then drifted lower all session to close just above 66,000, down about 0.5%. A weak yen, hovering near 163 to the dollar, wasn't enough to hold it up. The internals show exactly what survived the fade. Advantis, the chip equipment giant that led the morning charge, reversed to finish around 29,600 yen, essentially flat. SoftBank Group, the market's big artificial intelligence bet, closed down at around 5,700 yen. The one name that held a real gain was Kioxia, the memory maker, rose more than 5% to around 64,300 yen, as demand for memory chips stayed firm even as the broader chip trade wobbled. Memory held, momentum didn't. So here's what the day really tells us. The catalyst was real. Foreign money did come home to Korea, and the overnight chip rally was genuine, but the follow-through wasn't there. Three markets opened on conviction and closed on caution, and what was left standing at the bell was defensive: memory, oil, and a rotation into autos. The open question now is whether this morning's semiconductor surge was the start of something, or just a sharp bounce that the afternoon has already begun to doubt. We'll be back tomorrow to see whether the foreign buyers stick around and whether the chip trade can finally hold a gain into the close. Until then, subscribe to AJP for the numbers behind the story every market day. Thank you for watching AJP.